Hello, everybody. Mark Asley here. I'm here with Dr. Avivi, and we're talking today about burnout, which is incredibly common. We're going to start by talking about, how to detect it. It's going to be part of a 2-week series, and next week we're going to talk about what to do about it. So Adi's going to share some of her experience of working with burnout with some of her trauma clients. Adi, tell us about burnout.
All right. So burnout is something that's kind of like a buzzword. We hear about it, and it's really, really easy to miss. And I want to first and foremost normalize for the people who are viewing this video that you might not notice that something is going on. You might not really recognize the signs that you are being burned out, that you are running on fuels. And the reason is that we don't really notice when changes are insidious. Often what happens and you figure out that something is wrong is because somebody will come to you and say to you, hey, what's going on with you? Maybe they don't like how you behave, or maybe they're worried about you, and that's absolutely fine. I think both Mark and I had moments in our life where somebody had to come to us and be like, yo, do you need a 5 minute break or
Oh,
something?
oh
It
yeah.
does
Oh
happen.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And at the same time, we do want to, if possible, save you that conversation and teach you a little bit about what could you pay attention to, what signs are out there that will help you detect it. And next week, we'll talk about what to do about it, how to address it. So, what we're looking for when we're trying to notice our own burnout, to be mindful that this is what's going on for us, is to start paying attention to a change in your pattern, something that's a little bit different than what you usually do. And that change can come in all sort of shapes and forms. So I'm going to talk about a few common ones, and each of you are a unique individual, and you know what's regular for you and what's maybe out of the ordinary. So one thing that often happens is that people's sleeping pattern change when they are burned out. You suddenly feel exhausted and you need more sleep. Maybe you suddenly nap in the middle of the day, especially now that we're working at home and we're sheltering in place. Um, Suddenly you find yourself sleeping way more, or the other way around. Maybe you suddenly have symptoms of insomnia. You can't fall asleep, or you can't stay asleep, can't fall back asleep, or you wake up particularly early for you, which might increase the burnout, will give you, will take away from the energy. That's one thing. Another pattern that you could certainly pay attention to is your mood. Your mood might be changing. And again, each of us are different. We have different baseline. So you know your own baseline. Are you significantly more irritable, either at work or at home? Are you becoming a little hyper vigilant, kind of jumpy? Or are you numb, feeling a lot of nothing and kind of not feeling joy when you're doing something fun, not feeling angry, even if something is legitimately irritating, not feeling excited, just kind of numb to everything, not feeling sad. There are a lot of loss and grief right now, just not feeling your feelings. So, are these patterns different for you in the recent time? The other thing is using substances. It's really important to notice, and I'm not just talking about drugs or alcohol. I'm also talking about coffee, sugar. Are you consuming differently in a different pattern than how you were consuming before? Um, are you taking in something to kind of manage how uncomfortable you are or how fatigued you are? And you're taking an external substance in a way that's different, more exaggerated, more profound. And another way of looking at it and looking for patterns is in relationships. Are you having more intense interactions with other people? Are you feeling really disconnected from others? Or are you feeling you're finding yourself withdrawing or isolating, or actually kind of more needy, wanting more connection, asking for more when typically you don't need as much from others in your life? So these are just like some of the patterns. And I wonder, Mark, if you have anything to add, something that came to mind as I was talking about it.
Yeah, I think those are all great. One of the first places that we detect burnout, though, isn't in the home, it's actually in the workplace. So I think you
Mm-hmm.
brought up a lot of phenomenal things to look at home, eating, substances, relationships, sleep. But in the workplace is often when it starts first. So
Mm-hmm.
noticing if you're behaving differently there, or you're, in kind of psychoanalytic term, we use this word called acting out, which means
Mm-hmm.
you're not able to verbalize how you're feeling. So it's coming out in behavior. You can think of it like a kid throwing a temper tantrum, or like
Mm-hmm.
getting angry and smashing a toy or something, right? But the way we can act out in our workplace is by gossiping. It's a really, really common one, talking behind people's backs, kind of spreading that discontent.
Mm-hmm.
Stealing is a big one. So either stealing office supplies or, in a more extreme case, embezzling funds. Falsifying hours, right, is another way of stealing.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice yourself showing up consistently late to your workplace, or not responding to emails, or leaving early, or taking an extra long double lunch, something like that. Starting to notice when you start to disconnect from your work. And I think it's important, I can at least speak from the millennial generation, is that we have this idea that we should always love our work, that it should be like fueling us and making us strong. And that's kind of BS in my experience. Like, it's never going to be that. Like, we were sold this idea, my generation was sold this idea. It's never going to be that. In some points, it's going to be work. There's going to be things that you don't like to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there should be an overarching sense of purpose, a sense of motivation, some connection to a value set that you might have. Adi, I know you do a lot of work with values and a lot of work with, meaning in people's lives. Can you tell us a little about that and how work might play into that?
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing it up, and I do want to tie the two topics, the two kind of aspects of the topic together. You want to look at the patterns at your workplace that are similar to what I described, and do I derive the same meaning, the same sense of purpose, the sense that I am living a valued life from my job as before? And one of the ways that you might notice it is we all have, as you said, every job has some percentage of interest and excitement and some percentage of boredom and burdensome. There are parts of your job that you don't like. And most of us, because of that sense of meaning, because the work is important enough to us, or maybe we're connected to our team, or maybe we are dedicated to our boss, or the company that we work with, or the organization has a mission and a vision that means something to us, we're able to motivate ourselves to do even those less attractive parts of the job. Are you finding that there's a new pattern for you in which you're really unable to do it? You postpone it, you push it away, or you do kind of a half-assed job addressing that part of the job. And are you actually not taking joy from the parts of the job that are meaningful for you, that you do usually derive a sense of strength and fulfillment from? So that's another pattern at the job, at the workplace, that you can pay attention to let you know that maybe it's a little bit too much lately. Maybe you are unnourished and kind of lost a little bit of touch with what's important to you, with what you like about your job.
Yeah, I think it's, when that spark starts to go away, or when it starts to
Mm-hmm.
feel really disconnected from the story of your life. There's a type of psychotherapy called narrative therapy, which I don't particularly prescribe to, but I think it does have some good points, which is the
Mm-hmm.
idea that we're constantly writing our autobiography. And it connects to our values, it connects to our conditioning and our upbringing. And if we start to feel like our actual behaviors and our actions are too far away from the narrative, we start to feel cognitive dissonance, we start to feel disturbed,
Mm-hmm.
we start to feel like there's something deeply, deeply wrong. I'm not going
Right.
to deconstruct why that's very simple, but the idea is that if the life that we're living every day, doing our job, doing these acting out behaviors, coming home, crashing on the couch, like being kind of mean to our wife or husband, like if that starts to really disconnect from the values that we have or the person that we want to be, burnout can
Mm-hmm.
really creep in that way, as our life starts to feel less and
Absolutely.
less meaningful.
Yeah. And I think, again, for you to detect it before someone else needs to say something to you, or before you do something that violates your own values and you look back with some shame or regret, it's important to know what are my typical patterns and how is this differing from them. So if I typically come to work at a particular hour and I have my own little ritual, I get coffee or I check my email, am I actually staggering in the last minute? And I'm doing very little to prepare. Whatever it is that you typically do and you get pride from, you feel like you're doing well, are you kind of cutting corners in those places? And again, we all have our own patterns. So maybe until next week, until we go to what do I do about this, try to notice and bring into memory what are my patterns in times where I feel great, where I'm proud of myself, where I feel like my job is being done in a really good and pride worthy way. How do I relate to other people? How do I relate to myself? And is something different recently? And I would assume that many people would notice a difference in their pattern because we're living in pandemic. We are in a crisis, and this is taking a toll on us. So I also want to say that as we're talking, I'm thinking about perhaps doing even a third part, talking to people in executive position, people who are managing others, and how to help their team with burnout. And we can bank that for later.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And as you wrap up, I think I want to model by sharing one of the things that I notice about my burnout because I think it's a pattern that is common but not often talked about. It goes contrary to the typical belief about burnout, which is like not doing work. My pattern when I'm burning out is I overwork. I actually do more work, and I wake up and I'm stressed, and I check my device like right away, and I try to respond to all emails, and I'm like up on the weekends constantly thinking about work because I have this idea that I've painfully learned is false, that work will end. Especially in my business, which is, essentially consulting or psychotherapy, entrepreneurship, where like there isn't an end to it. But I can get this kind of delusional thought where it's like, okay, if I just like get through it, I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to like it's going to feel better. What it does, and I've been burned by this many times, is that it actually creates more work for me, right? Like accelerating actually creates more work. It's not like I'm sprinting to the finish to get it over with. So I've had to learn through some of my own coaching to really pace myself and really meter myself as I'm moving forward and to work more consistently instead of, more quickly.
I'm so happy that you're bringing it up, and maybe that's why we get along because I do a very similar thing to myself. And I think that speaks to yet another topic that we'll talk about some other time about our insecurities and the emotions that we come with to our jobs and how we are trying to fix it through the work. And that can create burnout. Us trying to feel that we are professionally secure, that we're secure in the organization, and that we are internally feeling good about ourselves could be part of the burnout. Us feeling a little desperate about it, trying to do more and more and more to somehow restore that sense of self as employees, because our jobs often are a huge part of our identity. So I want to wrap up and kind of look at all the things that we talked about and maybe make a mental note for ourselves and our viewers what we are going to talk about. Today we talked about burnout and how to learn that I am actually either in the process or have reached a point of burnout for myself before someone else have to come and tap me on the shoulder and make me take 5. And we looked at changing patterns, particularly at work and also in our personal habits that might clue us in that we need a break and we need to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, and next week we're going to talk about how to work with it, different strategies, both on the self-care and on kind of like the practical policy change way of how to make changes in your life and to help cope with the feelings of burnout. So please like, share, comment if you have stories about your burnout or stories about burnout people that you've worked with. We'd love to hear your patterns. If we get a big enough response, we might do some videos really detailing on the specific patterns if there's a theme, but we like to engage with our audience as much as possible. So as we're starting this up, let us know, give us feedback, let us know what you think and what thoughts are being brought up in your mind as you're listening to us.
Yep, we would love to hear from you, and we will readjourn next week.
Okay, take care everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.